I caught them in the living room, his hands on her like I was invisible, like my trust was nothing more than air. Rage twisted inside me so sharply that I could taste it, metallic, bitter, undeniable. My chest felt like it was about to cave in, and my world, the one I had built with care and loyalty, crumbled in seconds. I had always believed my father was my hero, my fiancée my future, and now both were betraying me in ways I could never have imagined. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. I backed away slowly, pretending I had seen nothing, though every nerve in my body screamed at me to explode. I closed the door behind me, letting the muffled sounds of laughter and whispers drift through the thin wood like knives. For a moment, I considered storming in, screaming, confronting them in the raw, unfiltered way that would satisfy my immediate thirst for vengeance. But I knew I had something more powerful at my disposal: control, patience, strategy. I would not be the fool who reacted. I would be the one who conquered silently. I sank into my chair, staring at the hardwood floor as if it could swallow me whole. My mind raced, replaying every conversation, every promise, every small act of trust I had given without question. How blind had I been? How easily they had fooled me, mocking my loyalty behind my back. My father, Robert, the man I had idolized all my life, and Megan, the woman I loved so fiercely, had dismantled my world while I slept. The humiliation stung deeper than any physical pain. I needed evidence, not just vague suspicions or fleeting anger, but irrefutable proof that could not be denied, argued away, or dismissed. My phone glowed with the notifications I had stumbled upon by accident: screenshots, messages, images, each more damning than the last. I downloaded everything, copied every file, and secured it behind multiple layers of encryption. It was a silent, meticulous effort, one I performed late into the night while my own pulse threatened to betray me. Every click, every saved file was a step toward my revenge, a hidden triumph I alone would wield. Morning came with a cruel clarity. The house was quiet, the chaos of betrayal tucked behind closed doors, yet I felt the tension like a living thing pressing against my skin. I had arranged for Megan to find herself in the spotlight tomorrow, but first I had to plan every detail. The wedding, the ceremony, the friends and family who would bear witness, these were not just bystanders, they were instruments in the orchestra of justice I intended to conduct. I walked through my preparations silently, mapping out the way every moment would unfold. QR codes linking to the evidence, discreetly slipped into programs, small gestures that would unleash the truth like a controlled explosion. The irony that I, the supposedly naive, betrayed son, would orchestrate the ultimate humiliation from behind the scenes was not lost on me. I imagined faces, shocked and confused, slowly piecing together the betrayal as each code was scanned. Every gasp, every whispered question, every frozen expression would be my quiet victory. And yet, as the sun dipped below the Chicago skyline, painting the streets in amber and crimson, a part of me trembled, not with fear of confrontation, but with the raw weight of the reckoning I was about to unleash. This was not just about exposing a lover's betrayal or a father's indiscretion. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my power. Every step I had taken, every silent hour of planning had led to this edge. The world would see the truth tomorrow, and nothing would ever be the same. I placed the last of the QR-coded cards into the ceremony programs, my hands steady, my mind sharp. The calm I projected belied the storm beneath, rage mixed with calculation, betrayal turned into strategy. The final piece was in place, but one thought lingered in the back of my mind like a shadow I could not shake. What if they discovered my plan before the curtain rose? What if the fragile thread of control I had so meticulously woven snapped in an instant? I went to bed that night with the weight of vengeance heavy on my chest, my dreams restless and jagged, and in the dark I heard the faintest sound of movement from the hallway. a whisper of steps that should not have been there, reminding me that even the best-laid plans are fragile, and some secrets have a way of finding you before you find them. The morning of the wedding arrived with a deceptively calm sky over Chicago, the sunlight slipping through the blinds like a spotlight on my hidden fury. I dressed slowly, every movement deliberate, my tie straightened, my cufflinks clicked into place, yet inside me a tempest churned. Everyone believed I was the composed groom, blissfully unaware of the betrayal that simmered beneath my skin. I had become a master of disguise in my own life, smiling, nodding, polite, while a storm of retribution waited to be unleashed. I arrived at the venue early, the historic chapel standing like a silent witness to what was about to unfold. The staff greeted me warmly, oblivious to the betrayal that had fractured the foundation of my life. I ran through the final checks of my plan, programs inserted with QR codes, encrypted web pages tested, every potential loophole closed. I moved like a ghost through the rooms, unnoticed, underestimated, the very definition of the underdog who was about to strike with surgical precision. Guests began arriving, laughter and chatter filling the air, all blissfully unaware that they were stepping into the epicenter of a scandal. My mother hugged me, her eyes bright with pride, unaware that the man she had trusted most was about to shatter her world. I returned her hug with a smile so calm it could have fooled a saint. No one suspected that behind that smile was a heart thrumming with betrayal and determination, a mind calculating the perfect moment for exposure. Then I saw them. Megan in her dress, radiant and oblivious, Robert standing nearby, confident as always. They had no inkling that I had already captured every message, every image, every shred of their deceit. I could almost hear the quiet, invisible laughter of karma wrapping around me like a cloak. For a moment, I felt the weight of every insult I had endured, every sly remark about my naive trust, every time they had mocked me in private while pretending to be my allies. My father, Robert, the man I had idolized all my life, and Megan, the woman I loved so fiercely, had dismantled my world while I slept. The ceremony began. Music swelled, guests seated, smiles masking tension they could not yet comprehend. I handed out the programs myself, a casual gesture that hid my triumph. Each QR code was a ticking time bomb, ready to detonate in the hands of unsuspecting family and friends. I could see people scanning them almost immediately, puzzled expressions forming, phones held up as confusion spread like wildfire. A flicker of hesitation in Megan's eyes, just the faintest tremor, told me she sensed something, but she could not grasp the full extent of what was coming. My father, ever proud, gave a slight nod towards me, perhaps assuming I had no clue, no suspicion, no inkling of the truth I had uncovered. He had underestimated me completely, and that, more than anything, filled me with a quiet, simmering satisfaction. I had played the part of the unbelievous son so perfectly that even he, the architect of my humiliation, had no idea the storm I carried inside me. As the officiant called for vows, I felt a strange clarity settle over me. Every betrayal, every lie, every hidden smirk directed at me had led to this moment. The altar no longer was a place for promises of love. It was a stage for justice, for revelation, for the reckoning that would redefine all of our lives. My hand brushed Megan's as we stood before family and friends, the world watching, and in that brief contact, I could feel the fragility of their secret crumbling beneath my calm exterior. Then it happened. A guest, curious and unsuspecting, scanned the QR code on the program. Their eyes widened, jaw sackened. A whisper ran through the rows of seats. Another scan, another gasp. Confusion rippled, spreading like wildfire, faces turning to each other in disbelief. The murmurs grew louder, the tension building to a crescendo. I could see Megan stiffen, her composure cracking, and Robert's confident posture faltering as the first hints of exposure reached him. The officiant paused, sensing the shift, looking around at the restless crowd. My heart beat with controlled intensity, every detail unfolding exactly as I had imagined. I had transformed from the underestimated, betrayed son into a quiet orchestrator of chaos, each moment meticulously planned. And yet, as my revenge began to blossom publicly, I felt the slightest pang of uncertainty. Would this be enough? Would the revelation hit with the full force I intended, shattering their lives as completely as they had tried to destroy mine? And then, just as I opened my mouth to speak, to guide the chaos to its inevitable conclusion, a hand touched my shoulder from behind, a presence I had not accounted for, someone whose knowledge, whose timing, threatened to undo all I had meticulously prepared. I froze. The air thickened. The entire chapel seemed to hold its breath. The moment I had spent months building, the silent triumph I had plotted, now teetered on the edge of disaster. I felt the weight of every gaze as murmurs swelled into whispers, whispers into gasps. The chapel had shifted from a sanctuary to a cage of secrets, and I was both predator and observer. Megan's eyes darted frantically, searching faces, searching for support, for excuses, for someone, anyone to shield her from what was coming. Robert's jaw tightened, his confident posture crumbling into barely contained panic. They had believed themselves untouchable, and now, with every scan, every digital proof revealed, that illusion was burning to ashes. I took a slow breath, letting the calm I had cultivated for months settle over me like armor. No tremor, no hint of the chaos churning inside. I had learned long ago that power comes not from anger, but from control. And tonight, control was mine. I let my eyes sweep over the crowd. Friends, family, colleagues, each face caught between disbelief and horror. The scandal unfolding like a dark symphony orchestrated by my own hands. Megan's lips quivered, but no sound came out. Her hands clenched the bouquet so tightly it threatened to snap, a futile attempt to anchor herself against the wave of exposure. Robert's eyes met mine for the briefest moment, a flash of recognition, guilt, fear, and then he looked away, powerless. The man who had built his empire on appearances, who had manipulated and lied with effortless charm, was now exposed in front of everyone he had ever impressed. I started walking down the aisle slowly, every step deliberate, the soft echo of my shoes on the polished wood marking the rhythm of my calculated triumph. Guests shifted, craning their necks, scanning phones, reading messages, each revelation landing with the subtle brutality of truth. My heart, though heavy, thrummed with a quiet satisfaction. Every insult I had endured, every time they had underestimated me, had led to this precise moment of revelation. And yet, even as I advanced, a knot of unease tightened in my chest. One of the guests, someone I had not anticipated, an old family friend, a quiet observer, was staring directly at me, a shadow of recognition crossing their face. Their eyes flicked to my hand, the subtle motion of a device I kept hidden, and then back to the chaos erupting around them. For a split second, I saw the possibility of my entire plan unraveling, the control I had cultivated slipping through fingers that had trembled only in private. The officiant cleared his throat, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Is there anyone who wishes to speak before vows are exchanged?" Silence followed, thick and heavy, every guest frozen in anticipation. I stepped forward, the air around me charged, every eye fixed on me, every mind racing to understand the storm I had summoned. The truth had started to settle like a weight over the room, but the climax, the point where betrayal meets justice, had not yet arrived. A soft buzz under my wrist reminded me that not every QR code had been scanned, not every revelation made. There were still pockets of ignorance, fragments of innocence untouched by the digital proof I had so carefully compiled. I could feel the suspense in their stares, the hesitation, the confusion, the creeping realization that nothing about this day would ever be the same. I was the calm in the center of a hurricane, the conductor of chaos, the architect of their downfall. And then it happened. A sudden, sharp interruption that I had not predicted. Megan's sister, someone fiercely loyal and protective, lunged toward the programs, trying to hide the cards, to suppress the evidence before it could spread further. Time slowed, and every movement crystallized in my mind. I stepped forward, steady, unflinching, intercepting her with the lightest touch, guiding her past the programs, letting the evidence flow into the world exactly as I had designed it. Every QR code, every digital revelation was now in the hands of those who needed to see it most, the people whose judgment would be final and merciless. Gasps rippled through the chapel, voices rising in incredulous whispers. My mother's face went pale, her hand clutching her chest as the realization struck her. Her husband, her daughter-in-law, the very people she had trusted most, had betrayed everything she held sacred. Faces I had known for years contorted in shock, disbelief, and a kind of moral horror that I had only imagined in my darkest fantasies. The humiliation was no longer private. It was an unstoppable tidal wave sweeping over everyone who had once underestimated me. I walked up the aisle slowly, deliberately, letting every step punctuate the chaos. Megan tried to speak, tried to protest, but no words could cut through the growing swell of proof displayed on phones and tablets, every scan revealing layers of lies, betrayal, and deceit. Robert's confident mask had cracked completely. His empire of charm and authority was crumbling in real time. I could almost hear the echoes of every insult, every smear, every moment they had mocked me behind closed doors, now turning back on them like a mirror reflecting their own shame. And still, I remained calm. The quiet control I had honed for months was my weapon now. Sharper than any anger, more piercing than any scream. I could feel their panic radiating outward, a physical heat in the room, a ripple of fear and confusion that validated every moment of silent effort I had invested. Every whispered apology they might have hoped for, every plea for mercy fell flat. The guests were witnesses to a truth so stark, so undeniable that no charm or manipulation could erase it. Then, something unexpected happened. An ally I had not foreseen stepped forward. One of Robert's business associates, someone who had seen the man at his most ruthless, approached with a quiet, deliberate demeanor. They had scanned a QR code as well, and their expression twisted from curiosity to shock to recognition. Without a word, they turned towards Robert, their posture rigid, the unspoken accusation hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. Robert's empire, the carefully curated image of power he had spent decades building, began to crumble even faster. Megan's face fell, her composure shattered. Her rehearsed lies, the intricate web of deceit she had woven with my father, dissolved in seconds under the weight of public exposure. She tried to reach for me, to plead or manipulate, but my calm gaze met hers, unflinching. I had anticipated every excuse, every manipulation, every attempt to evade accountability. Tonight, none of it would work. I was the orchestrator, the hidden force that had turned betrayal into a spectacle of justice. And yet, as I stood there surrounded by the stunned silence and rising murmurs of shock, I felt a flicker of unease. Somewhere beneath the surface, a new variable was emerging. Someone in the crowd whose knowledge, whose loyalty threatened to twist the story in a way I had not planned. My heart skipped, not with fear, but with awareness. Every meticulously crafted moment, every silent victory I had prepared could pivot in an instant. One misstep, one unexpected move, and the equilibrium of my carefully designed revenge could collapse like a house of cards. I glanced at the altar, at the scattered programs, at the phones held high with damning proof, and knew that the final act was imminent. The storm I had orchestrated was no longer silent. It roared around me, fierce and unpredictable, and in its chaos lay the ultimate opportunity, not just for exposure, but for triumph, for reclamation, for the emotional victory that had fueled every hour of planning. And then, just as I prepared to take the final step, a sudden, deafening interruption, someone I never expected, made their presence known.
A gasp, a shout, a flash of movement that could unravel everything. The chapel froze, all eyes shifted, my carefully constructed stage teetered on the edge of disaster, and the question hung in the air like a blade. Would my revenge reach its apex, or would this unforeseen twist destroy everything I had fought for? The interruption hit like a lightning bolt. Megan's younger cousin, someone I had never noticed in the months of planning, had grabbed a handful of programs, attempting to destroy the evidence before it could spread further. Time slowed, and every movement crystallized in my mind. I stepped forward, steady, unflinching, intercepting her with the lightest touch, guiding her past the programs, letting the evidence flow into the world exactly as I had designed it. Every QR code, every digital revelation was now in the hands of those who needed to see it most, the people whose judgment would be final and merciless. Gasps rippled through the chapel, voices rising in incredulous whispers. My mother's face went pale, her hand clutching her chest as the realization struck her. Her husband, her daughter-in-law, the very people she had trusted most, had betrayed everything she held sacred. Faces I had known for years contorted in shock, disbelief, and a kind of moral horror that I had only imagined in my darkest.
The room went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted. Whispers surged into shocked exclamations. Guests stared at the screens, at each other, at the unfolding chaos. Faces turned pale, hands flew to mouths, eyes darted between Robert and Megan. My father's proud, polished image cracked entirely, his empire of charm and deception exposed in front of the people who had once revered him. Megan's carefully curated persona collapsed as her lies were broadcast silently to the crowd, the QR codes acting as a scalpel cutting through every mask she had worn. I felt the cold thrill of justice surge through me. Months of planning, of hidden effort, of silent endurance had culminated in this precise moment. Every insult, every act of underestimation, every moment I had been mocked or belittled now folded back on them, sharp and unrelenting. My calm, my composure, my calculated patience, they were my weapons, and they had struck with devastating precision. Robert's business associates stepped forward, phone in hand, documenting the unraveling truth. The subtle threat in their posture, the unspoken judgment, made my father's knees weaken. His influence, his power, his carefully constructed image of control, all crumbling in a single public moment. Megan tried to reach for me, tried to twist the narrative, but my gaze pinned her firmly, a silent warning. There was no escape, no manipulation, no way to rewrite this ending. The officiant looked at me, confused, unsure, but the altar had transformed. It was no longer a place of vows, it was a stage for reckoning. I raised my voice, calm, deliberate, letting the truth land with clarity and authority. The betrayal, the lies, the affair, all exposed, each word, each sentence a hammer striking the foundation of their deception. The guests' reactions were instantaneous, shock, horror, whispers of disbelief spreading like wildfire. The humiliation was total, public, irreversible. I glanced at my mother, her face a mixture of grief and relief, finally understanding the betrayal she had ignored or failed to see. I could feel the weight of family judgment, but also the quiet satisfaction of justice delivered without rage, without losing myself to blind fury. Megan's career, Robert's business, the facade of family unity, all shattered. They had underestimated me, and that underestimation had been their undoing. And yet, even in the aftermath, I did not feel hatred. The revenge had been meticulously executed, but my purpose had always been reclaiming my life, my dignity, my peace. I had orchestrated chaos, yes, but I had done it with control, with patience, with foresight. I had turned betrayal into liberation, humiliation into empowerment. The storm of exposure had passed, leaving clarity and strength in its wake. I left the chapel without looking back, the murmur of stunned guests trailing behind me.
Chicago, with all its memories and betrayal, was no longer mine. Austin awaited, a fresh start, a career opportunity, a life rebuilt on my own terms. My father's betrayal no longer chained me. Megan's lies no longer haunted me. I had endured, planned, executed, and emerged stronger. Months later, I stood in my new apartment in Austin, the skyline glowing beyond the windows. I had forgiven my father, not because he deserved it, but because I needed peace. I had rebuilt my career, forged new relationships, and reclaimed the life that had been threatened. Betrayal had tried to destroy me, but it had only refined me, taught me patience, strategy, and the power of calm triumph. I was free. I was stronger. I was unstoppable. And somewhere deep inside, I smiled quietly, knowing that the people who had once mocked and betrayed me had witnessed the full measure of their miscalculation, and the man they had underestimated had risen, calm and unbroken from the ashes.